Alright guys, it's Rogowy here and we're doing another tutorial. In this week's tutorial we are looking at ways that we can enhance portraits so that our subjects just appear a little bit more refined, a little bit more polished. So let's get started. Let's look really quickly at a few different techniques here that we can use. In your tutorial folder we're going to look at MF Portrait. Actually, before I get started, here's what I'm talking about. Here is an example I found on the web here of an image before it was enhanced. And this is already an excellent photograph. There's nothing wrong with this. You can see the person even marked it as before. There's nothing wrong with this. This is great. And the subject, she's beautiful, and the lighting and everything's nice. And after, this is the result afterwards. All right, so I don't know if I can show both one after another. There we go, just like that. Now this is a great shot to begin with, but this is what probably would have ended up in a magazine or on an advertisement. So before people say to me, hey Rogowy, you know, you're being sexist by taking people and trying to make them more beautiful or whatever, if you think for a second that this isn't done on pretty much every single image that gets printed on magazines or advertisements or billboards or wherever they're being used, you'd be wrong. This is common. This is very common, and I'm going to show you some techniques you can use on your own photographs to enhance certain qualities of the photograph themselves. So we're going to open up MF Portrait. And into Photoshop, here we go. And MF Portrait is a picture of the lovely Megan Fox without any sort of makeup on. It's a very natural photo, and there's nothing wrong with this, like I said. And before we get started, I want to make sure I say that I take no credit for the photography that's used in this tutorial. However, for educational purposes, we will look at ways that we can enhance this photo a bit. Now, when I look at this photo, I say, yes, this is a great shot of her. It's very natural. All right, you can tell if she is wearing any makeup, it's very, very minimal because we can see her skin has a rougher tone. All right, we can see some blemishes. And normally, you know, makeup and that would get rid of that. We also see that we got a very, very glossy shine on her skin. All right, you can see it in her cheek, you can see it in her forehead, you can see it on her nose. And normally, photographers would watch for that and correct that either after or during the shoot so that there isn't as much reflection. One last thing I noticed when I look at this shot is that the photographer did not get any sort of catch light in her eyes. Now, in your own photography, whenever you can, try to include some sort of a catch light in the eyes. It's going to give your subject much more character, much more life, and it's going to ultimately it's going to be a better shot in the end. All right, so we're going to start with her skin, and I'm going to show you a few tricks. You know, if you got a friend that you took a photo of and, you know, maybe they got some acne or they got something that they don't like about their skin, these techniques will definitely help you fix up those type of images. And on her, on Megan here, we've got very minor blemishes. And I'm going to just show you really quick a technique you can use to get rid of them. And we're also going to look at some bigger blemishes, which would be freckles, you know, which I don't really think are a bad thing. It's just I'm going to show you how to remove that on her shoulder here. So let's get started. All right, today we're going to be looking at the healing brush tool, which if you're in your tools over here, it is the 6th one down. You might have to hold down. It's not the spot healing brush tool. It's not the one with the selection next to it. It's just the Band-Aid one. So you got to hold down, go to the healing brush tool. Before you get started, set your hardness down to about 25%. You'll notice with the healing brush, you've got all these other options. Just leave them as they are. And what I like to do is I like to shrink down my brush so that it's just a bit bigger than the blemish that I'm working on. So if I considered that a blemish right there, then I'm going to just make my brush a tiny bit bigger than the blemish on the image. Now here's a little trick that I was shown a long time ago by a portrait retoucher. And he told me, when you are adjusting images where you have to remove something that's dark on the skin, set your mode up here. Normally it'll be set to normal. Set your mode to lighten. All right, tell Photoshop that you're trying to lighten the dark area that you're working on. And opposite, if you have an area that's really bright on the skin, set it to darken. And what this does is it ensures that the areas that are light don't get affected. The only area that's affected is the blemish on the skin. So I'm going to set it to lighten. And like I said, I got my brush a little bigger than the actual blemish itself. And the way that the healing brush works is we have to tell it to refer to some patch of skin or part of the image that we want to use as a reference point. So I hold the Option key, and you'll notice my cursor changes to a crosshair. So for this one, I'm going to say that this blemish here we're going to remove. I'm going to choose this good patch of skin that's right next to it. So I'm going to hold Option, and I'm going to click. And now I can let go, and you'll see that this patch of skin now comes over top of the blemish that I'm trying to remove. Now all I have to do is click once, and that blemish disappears. This is an excellent way of working on, like I said, on dark blemishes, and it's a one-click fix. So the one below her mouth here, same deal, hold Option, click this skin here, and click over the blemish itself, and it's gone. Now the nice thing about healing brush, rather than using something like clone stamp, which is pretty traditional, is the healing brush refers to all the color around the area where the blemish is or whatever you're trying to remove, and it picks an average from all the different areas so that that blemish completely blends in with the skin that's already there. So here's a little one by her mouth. Here I might pick this skin here and click, and it's gone. All right, and if I don't like the result, I can click and I can do it again. Now, when I get down to her shoulder here, and I see all these freckles, I can just really quickly pick some skin over here, and this time I'm actually, or over here, it doesn't really matter. I can just paint over it a little bit, and even when you click, so now I'm clicking and painting a bit, it will do the same thing to a larger area. All right, so I'm just going through here, removing the freckles on her shoulder. So I'm just painting along, painting along. All right, so keep going with that. Now be very careful with the freckles along the edge of her shoulder, and I'm going to show you why in a second. All right, so let's just get all the ones kind of on the interior of her shoulder. Just like this. All right, and that's pretty good. I got most of them. Now watch what happens when I try to do this technique with one that's close by the edge. So like, let's say this one. I'm going to click, good patch of skin, and I'm going to click that blemish. I don't know if you can tell, but what it does is it pulls some of the black from the edge into that selection. So that's not a good way of dealing with areas that overlap an area of high contrast. So if you've got a black background in your picture, and see right there, perfect example, it drew all that black from the edge. So if you got an image that has a black background, be very careful with things along the edge because you're going to get that color sucked in. How do we fix that? We go to the clone stamp, which was, like I said, the old way of doing it, and it's still very effective. Clone stamp, Same brush option set here. I could set this to lighten if I want to. It's going to work here as well. And this time I'm going to refer to some skin here, and I'm going to click that skin near the edge. Now the difference here is that clone stamp doesn't do anything to compare the color near the blemish. It just replaces it, and it doesn't really look at, okay, is it lighter or darker in that area? You know, it doesn't look for that at all. Okay, so there we go. We got rid of her major blemishes on the shoulder. And so if I go to my history, if you don't have that showing, go to Window History, click the top so you can see the before and the after. And it's very minor, but we took out some of the bigger blemishes on her shoulder and on her face. Now, that works really well if I'm taking out spots where there's issues. But like I said, in this particular photo, we got other issues. We got this really bright shine, and you know, her skin looks blotchy. And if I was working on this for a magazine, for example, I'd probably want to even out her skin. I'd want to make sure that her skin doesn't have those highlights and it's not blotchy in any sort of way. But before I do that, because what we'll do next is actually going to affect the whole image, we're going to look at a little trick here to fixing eyebrows. Now, if we look at her eyebrows are actually very nicely plucked already. We've got one stray hair here, so we could take the clone stamp and just take some skin here and remove that stray hair, just so that's perfect. But I'm going to show you a trick to giving your subjects perfectly manicured eyebrows. Okay, so we're going to go to the lasso tool, third one down, select that. And we're going, and if you don't see it, just hold down and find it there. And we're going to set the feather at the very top here to 5, just like that. And then what I'm going to do with the lasso tool is I'm going to draw a selection above the eyebrow. You don't want to go into the hairs at all of the eyebrow. It's got to be above. So I'm going to click, and you can see I'm drawing. I'm holding down, and I went really close. You could go a little further away if it's too tough to do. All right, there you go. And I'm going to hold Shift, so I'm adding to my selection. I'm holding Shift and drawing another selection. Same deal on this eyebrow, like that. All right, so I've got these 2 selections above her eyebrows. Now, it's important to note that whatever shape you made the bottom of these selections is what the new shape of the eyebrow on the top is going to become, and I'm going to show you what I mean. Go to your background layer, press Command J, and you'll now have those pieces of skin on a separate layer. Now all I have to do is switch to the Move tool, which is the first tool in your tools here, and then just use the arrow keys on the keyboard to pull that skin down, and I can manicure her eyebrows as thin or as thick as I want. You can see I'm going up and down there just to show you the effect. All right, so maybe I like it right there. All right, maybe I think that's a good thickness. And then what I can do is, because you do see a little bit of duplication of the skin on top, I'm just going to take the eraser tool, and I'm just going to gently erase the skin at the top so that it looks more natural. All right, so with that layer off, you can see how thick they are. With that on, perfect. And again, that's just a quick trick to making your subject's eyebrows perfect, flawless. So what we'll do is we'll flatten our image. Okay, we don't want to have that layer separate, so we're going to go to the corner. If you look at where my cursor is here, we're going to go to the corner of the layers palette, and we're going to go to Flatten Image. We've now got that correction on that same layer. All right, so now that's just a single layer. Now here's a trick to fixing the overall skin of your subject. All right, when you want to fix everything at once on a subject's skin, you could go with the clone stamp or the healing brush and go to every single blemish, but that's going to take a long time and it's going to be painful. So I'm going to show you a trick here that we can use to fix her skin all at once. Okay, so this involves changing our color mode. All right, so we're going to go to image mode and we're going to change our image to CMYK. It's going to seem like a weird thing to do, but I'll show you why in a second. And if you get this little menu that comes up, just hit OK. Then we're going to go over to the right where our layers palette is, and we're going to look for the tab at the top of that palette that says channels. Now we're going to look for the channel by clicking. There's going to be cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And we're going to look for the channel that has the most noticeable blemishes. And it's usually yellow. All right, you can see that the yellow shows all the imperfections of the skin. And now we're going to hit Command A to select the entire image. All right, so I got the entire image selected. All right, that was Command A. Then we're going to go to Edit, Copy, and do it. I always do it twice just in case it didn't get my selection there. Copy, and go to the CMYK channel, turn that on, and all the color will come back. Click Layers once again to come back to the Layers palette. Now go to Image, Mode, and RGB. Let's go back to RGB. You'll notice that we still have our our canvas selected. That's good. If you lost that, just press Command A again. And now we're going to go Edit, Paste. And you'll notice we have our background image, which we were working on, and now we pasted the channel from our CMYK image. In order to highlight these blemishes and to make them more noticeable, what we're going to do is we're going to invert the colors of this layer. So we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, Invert. And now you can see we got this zombie type version of Megan Fox with her blemishes really noticeable, and that's what we want. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change the blending mode of this layer. And this takes a bit of experimentation. What I recommend you do first, before you even change the blending mode, is bring down your opacity to something like 25% or so. All right, bring that right down. Maybe 30. And now change your blending mode. Now, I've already experimented with this image and I thought that vivid light worked really nicely. Don't worry about what's happening out here. You're going to see little pieces of green and doesn't look good. But adjust the opacity to what you think looks good for that image. We're only looking at her skin here. We're not looking at anything else. So adjust for the skin. And I'm finding that with this particular image, 30% is pretty good actually. Now we're going to fix up the areas where we've got some issues, like outside of the picture we're getting these weird green blobs. And sometimes in the picture you see those as well, so we got to be careful for that. We're going to just simply take our eraser and we're going to erase out the parts that should not be affected. Now, if I was doing this for a magazine, if I was doing this professionally, there's programs that will automatically touch up the skin that run inside of Photoshop. However, I would pay close attention, really close and careful attention, that I don't affect the skin or I don't click the skin in any way. Also, you might want to click inside the eyes, so you bring back the whites of the eyes. All right, because those got darkened up a bit. All right, and now we can see our effect by turning it off and on. What we've done by doing that, and I'll just zoom in so you can see the effect a little bit better, is we've really flattened out our skin. We've really smoothed it out. You can see these really bright, shiny highlights that were on the skin. We would call those sweat highlights. If I turn this on, you'll see that that's evened that out. All right, no longer that noticeable. And if you don't like the effect you've got here, if you think it's too much, just adjust for that. Just adjust your opacity and bring it to a point where you think it looks natural. Now, the reason I think this technique works really, really well is we're not erasing any of her skin. We're not, using the smudge tool or the clone stamp. We're not taking anything away. We're simply taking a copy of her skin, inverting it, and then just putting her skin right back on top. So it's very natural looking, and it's a good effect. It looks nice. It makes the skin look nice and even. So that's what we want. All right, so it's coming along. We're gonna do a couple more things, and yeah, we're gonna tweak her eyelashes and her eyes as well. All right, so continuing on here, we are now going to work on the eyelashes. And I want to say that there's nothing wrong with her eyelashes. She has eyelashes. They're showing up nicely here. But for the sake of learning how to make perfect eyelashes, I'm going to show you how. You notice we have one stray eyelash coming into her eye. And so we can use the clone stamp tool in this case. I'm going to set it to lighten. I'm going to select some of the white of her eye here, holding Option, and I'm going to just paint out. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Can't do much if you're on the wrong layer, so you got to go background layer here. Same thing, and just paint out that bit of her eye. Now here's a good area where you can very easily notice where I've touched it up if you're not careful. That's not too bad. You just want to make sure it's not noticeable. Command 0. Yeah, it's not bad. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to fix her eyelashes, and we're going to make her have perfect eyelashes, whatever that means. We're going to make a new layer, and we can call this layer that we just created, I'm going to call it Skin Fix. I'm going to leave it there, and at any time we can change the intensity or whatever if we think it looks bad. We're going to call this one Eyelashes. Whoops, Eyelashes. And in order to fix the eyelashes, to add better eyelashes, I've actually got a eyelash brush, which will make our job much easier. So we're going to go to the brush tool. We're going to go up to the top where we have our brush options. We're going to open that up. And on the top right of that window, we're going to go Load Brushes. And in that folder on the desktop that you should have copied over, where is mine? You have a file called SS Eyelashes. We're going to open that. You'll notice now at the bottom of our brush menu, I'm just going to make this bigger so I can actually see. You'll notice now we have tons of different eyelashes. Now some look really fake, some look really good. Takes a little bit of experimentation, but you'll notice that every one of them has a left and a right eyelash. So I'm going to try this one just to see how it looks. Chances are you're going to have to shrink your eyelash down because they're pretty huge. And you're just going to set your color to black, and you're just going to click. So I'm going to get it around the size that I want it. And I'm going to click. And obviously it doesn't line up with the eye. It doesn't even look like it belongs there at all. So we're going to press Command T, and now we're going to just adjust by rotating it on the edge here and move it into position as best as we can. All right, we're going to make sure it lines up with her top eyelid. Tweak it like so. And you know what? I think my foreground color wasn't completely black. I think it's a little bit brown. So turn that on and off, and you can see what we did is we boosted her eyelash a bit. All right, now we're going to do the right one. Now this is always tricky because I have to, first of all, make a new layer. I'm going to call it Eyelash Right. Okay, and I'm going to go into here, and I got to try to figure out which one I just clicked. This is always tricky. So I'm looking for, I think this one. And click that. And again, using the brackets, or you can use this slider here, get it down to a manageable size. And on the eyelash right layer now, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just find a size that's close, click. And that one might not need much of an adjustment. I can kind of tweak it a bit so that it's perfect. And we'll just put it in there like that. All right. So there's her fake eyelashes. What I suggest you do is you merge these two layers. So in order to do that, you select the top one, eyelash right, go to the corner of the layers palette and just say merge down. And that'll put both of the eyelashes on the eyelash layer. Now it's very minor. It's a very minor adjustment. However, if you want your eyelashes to look longer or thicker or more perfect, then that's a very easy way to do it. Who would have thought? You just download an eyelash brush and life is good. All right, so now we're going to work on enhancing her eyes and then we'll be done with it. All right, so now adjusting her eyes. Like I said before, one thing that the photographer didn't notice here is that there was no catch lights in her eyes. Her eyes look dead. All right, without catch lights, without specular highlights in the eyes, your subject's gonna look less alive. And I'm gonna show you a quick trick on how to add specular highlights to your subject. So make a new layer. Let's call it catch lights. And we're gonna go to the lasso tool, the elliptical lasso tool. Sorry, the elliptical marquee tool. My apologies. That's the second tool down, hold down and choose it, the elliptical marquee tool. And zoom in on one of the eyes. Something like that. Now we can choose which direction the light's coming from, but we can also tell which way the light was coming from by the highlights on the face itself. All right, I can tell that the lights were coming from somewhere in this direction because that's the side of her face that's lit the most. So our main light would have been coming from the side somewhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to add highlights in those eyes. So we're going to go to the elliptical selection tool, marquee tool, and we're going to hold shift and we're going to create a circle. All right, so I'm holding shift to make a perfect circle and we're going to place it just off the dark part of the pupil itself. All right, so hold shift, hold shift to make it a circle, but hold space to move that circle around. I haven't let go yet. All right, so I'm gonna put it somewhere right about there. Okay, then I'm gonna hold shift again, and I'm gonna draw a smaller circle, and I'm gonna put it at about 45-degree angle from that one I just created. So we got a big circle, we got a small circle, and they're both going kind of into the center of the eye. You'll always see that with specular highlights, they're usually a large and a small one just because of the reflection off the retina. And we'll do the same to the other eye. So we're holding space to get over there, and we're holding shift now to do the same thing. Make one big one. Remember, you can use the space bar to move that around. Kind of in the same area. Try to imagine where that light would be coming from. And still holding shift, make your small one. Just like that. All right, so I went Command 0 so we could see what we just did. We have four circles, 2 big ones, 2 small ones in each eye. And we're gonna go to Edit, Fill, we're gonna set it to white from this pull down and hit OK. Press Command D and Command 0, and you'll notice it looks very, very, very fake. All right, that's okay for now. We'll adjust that after. As long as the specular highlights look like they're coming from the same light source, that's all we're really worried about here. Then we're gonna add another layer. Okay, I call this the we'll call it the halo, or we'll call it the eye halo. I don't know what else to call it. I don't know the technical term here. What we're going to do is when you have light coming into the eye, it actually brightens this part of the iris. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to lighten that part of the iris. Now we could do this very simply. Actually, you know what? Maybe I will take the simpler way here and make it easier on you guys. Click the background layer, okay, and draw a circle around each of the pupils. Sorry, around each of the irises. And don't worry if it goes off, no big deal. Hold shift, do the same thing with the other eye. Same thing, don't worry if it goes off, not a big deal. Just try to imagine where that would continue behind the eyelid. Remember, we have the background selected, press Command J. And if you hide the lower layer, you should have those eyeballs or the irises now on their own layer. Move it up, okay. Move it up to below the catch lights. We don't want to cover up the catch lights. And actually this eye halo layer, let's just delete it because we don't need it. I'm not going to do it that way. Layer 1, the one we just created with the eyes on there. Ooh, I noticed that we have to put it below the eyelashes as well because they're getting covered up. So you got catch lights, eyelashes, the one we just created, and let's call that eye halo. All right. And what we're going to do with this layer, first off, is we are going to use the eraser and we're going to erase the parts that go outside of the eye. So I'm just going to go in here, erase, even though it's not going to look like it's doing anything. As long as we're on the eye halo layer, we're erasing the parts that are outside of the eye. All right, we're just doing it like this, and we can check it by hiding the background layer, and you can see what that did is that just erased some of those parts there. Now what we want to do is we want to add the halo to the eye. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to go to the dodge tool. All right, and that's way down here. It kind of looks like a lollipop, I guess. And we're going to choose that. All right, and the way this tool works is your exposure should be set to 50%, and we're going to affect the midtones. We're going to bring our brush size down a bit, something like that, and we're going to set our hardness to 0. The way this brush works is everything we click is going to be lightened. All right, so watch what happens. Do you see that tiny bit of lightening that's happening to the edge of the eye? All right, the more that I click, the lighter it gets. All right, so I'm just clicking and I am adding that light halo, I'm gonna, as I called it, to the edge, the opposite edge of the eye, the part that the light would be coming in and hitting inside of the eye. All right, now if you think it's too intense, if you think it's gone overboard and it doesn't look right, I'm just using my eraser here to kind of fix mine up, then what you can do is, first of all, just erase a little so you got the black edge of the eye showing up, and just pull down the opacity on that layer to the desired strength. All right, something like that. Now you'll see before and after, it's a noticeable difference. Okay, it really brings out the color of the eyes, and that's what catch lights would do as well. So that's why, like I said, we're kind of breathing life into her eyes. All right, now we're going to go to the catch lights layer, and they do still look really fake. So we're going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're just going to fade them out a bit so that they're not so perfect. Soften them up a bit. All right, I went to about just a tiny bit there, 0.7, just to soften the edge. And then I'm going to pull down the opacity to a level that I feel looks somewhat natural. Something like that. Now, if I feel like after I look at this, it needs a little more blur, I could do that. I could go to Filter, Blur again and just soften them even more till I get a very natural looking result. All right. Now, if you think it looks totally unnatural, you know, completely, you can just erase it or get rid of it altogether. But that looks pretty good. I'm just going to move them over a tiny bit so they're a little more towards the middle of the eye. That looks pretty good. And I want you to save that. Okay, so I'm going to go save as. I'm going to put it to the desktop. We're going to call it MF Portrait. We're going to save it and hit OK. And let's just take a quick look at what we started with compared to what we ended up with. So let's go back to the beginning here. All right, when we looked at the original picture, like I said, we had lots of highlights on the skin. Okay, we got a lot of shine. The eyes, like I said, look pretty dead. The skin is blotchy. We got, you know, lots of blemishes along her shoulder. All right, by the end, we have evened out that skin, fixed up her eyebrows, fixed up her eyelashes. We added the highlights to her eyes, took the blemishes off the shoulder, and you can see that the end result is much more polished. I want to say polished. I don't want to say fake, but that's pretty much what it is. It is faking, you know, the image and making it look better. And the nice thing about the way we have it set up here is that we could turn off or turn on any of these things that we did, well, aside from the eyebrows. And we can go and adjust them if we think that it, you know, needs an improvement of some sort. Let's say I want to increase the saturation of her skin. I can go image adjustment saturation on the background layer, and I can tweak that to give her a warmer look. Maybe I like that. All right, not bad. She looked kind of dead before. So that's what I like about it, is that we can go and change and, you know, modify it at any point after if we save it as a Photoshop file. I would like to see you guys once in a while, don't make everybody look plastic, but once in a while on your portraits, use some of these techniques. Make your subjects look a little bit more polished. And yeah, I'd like to see what you guys can come up with there.